My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life I was the one called selfish, until the night I revealed the truth. That night at the country club, my father raised his glass, smiled at my sister, and then turned to me with words that cut deeper than any insult I had ever received. "Sarah," he said in front of the entire room, "you've always been selfish." The table went silent for a moment before laughter and chatter resumed, everyone quick to praise Lauren, my younger sister, his golden child. She soaked up the attention like sunlight, glowing in the spotlight that had always been reserved for her. I sat there frozen, my heart pounding, realizing something inside me had just snapped. For the first time in my life, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Before I tell you what happened after that night, and trust me, the truth that came out later shocked my entire family, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt overlooked, underappreciated, or unfairly compared to someone else, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just a family drama, it's a story about years of sacrifice, hidden resentment, and one explosive moment that changed everything. Stay with me until the end, because what happened next left everyone speechless. I didn't become selfish overnight. In fact, my entire life had been the exact opposite. I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the daughter who never made waves. But in my family, effort was invisible. From the time we were kids, my father saw Lauren as the star. She was charming, bubbly, a natural entertainer. I was quiet, serious, the kind of child who preferred books over performances. To my father, that meant I was less. And he made sure I knew it. Growing up in Oakbrook, a neat little suburb outside, there was an unspoken competition among families, whose kids were the most talented, the most successful, the most enviable. In our household, the trophy always went to Lauren. She never met a stranger, my father would brag, while I stood quietly beside him, invisible in her shadow. My mother, Linda, tried to soften the blows, but she was a peacemaker above all else. Instead of challenging my father, she would whisper to me after another painful slight, "Your dad loves you too, Sarah. He just shows it differently." What she really meant was that he showed it less, if at all. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When I made the honor roll, I'd get a flat good job from my father. When Lauren landed a minor role in the school play, he bought her flowers and took us all to dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. "Your sister has star quality," he explained when I dared to ask why. "Academics come easily to you, Sarah. It's not as impressive." Nothing about school came easily to me. I stayed up until midnight most nights, pushing myself to maintain grades, while Lauren bounced effortlessly from hobby to hobby. But effort never counted in my father's eyes, charm did. When my parents divorced during my junior year of high school, the divide grew worse. I was 16, focused on survival, school, college applications, holding myself together. Lauren, only 13, became Dad's emotional support. He leaned on her like she was his confidant, while I was expected to be strong, self-sufficient, the child who didn't need comforting. Weekend visits to his bachelor apartment only deepened the imbalance. Dad would plan elaborate outings for Lauren, shopping trips, dinners, shows. I'd be left behind, told to entertain myself. And if I ever expressed hurt? "Why can't you be more like your sister? She's easy to please." That phrase stuck like poison in my veins. By the time college came around, the contrast was unbearable. I worked 2 jobs, saved every dollar, took out loans, and still barely scraped by. Dad told me independence would build character. Lauren, on the other hand, had her tuition, her apartment, and even a car fully funded by him. When she dropped out, not once, but 3 separate times, he never criticized. "College isn't for everyone. She's creative. She'll find her path." Meanwhile, I clawed my way through Northwestern, pulling 30-hour workweeks on top of classes. I graduated with honors, exhausted but proud. Every success was mine alone, earned through sleepless nights and sacrifice. And yet, in our family narrative, I was still the serious one, the rigid one, the one who never learned how to really live. Lauren was still the shining star. The girl with potential. The one who deserved second, third, and fourth chances. And me? I became the background character in my own family story. That is, until that night at the country club, the night my father called me selfish in front of everyone. The night the truth I had been holding back for years clawed its way to the surface, desperate to be spoken. But before we get there, you need to understand exactly how much I gave, how much I lost, and how long I stayed silent. Because only then will the explosion at that dinner table make sense. When I walked across the stage at Northwestern to receive my diploma, I thought my father might finally look at me with pride. I had paid my own way through college, working nights at a coffee shop and grinding through classes on just a few hours of sleep. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA. And yet, when the ceremony ended and I found him in the crowd, his words weren't "I'm proud of you." They were, "Well, Sarah, hard work is good, but you should try to be more like your sister. She knows how to enjoy life." After high school, independence wasn't a choice for me. It was a demand. Dad made it clear, "You're capable. You'll figure it out. That's what makes you strong." Those were his words when I asked for help with tuition. Instead, I was expected to work, take loans, and build character. Meanwhile, Lauren's path was lined with cushions. Dad wrote checks for her tuition, her rent, even her car. When she dropped out after her first semester, he didn't scold her. He comforted her. "College isn't for everyone, sweetheart. You'll find your path." Her path changed constantly. She switched majors, transferred schools, quit programs. Dad's wallet opened each time as if her failures were just steps towards some greater destiny. I, on the other hand, couldn't afford to fail. I pulled 30 hours a week at a coffee shop, studied until midnight, and still showed up for early lectures. Every dollar went to survival, textbooks, bills, tuition payments. It wasn't just exhausting. It was isolating. While other students traveled on spring break, I worked double shifts. When friends went out on weekends, I stayed in with flashcards and instant ramen. My dream of marketing wasn't fueled by passion alone, it was fueled by necessity. Lauren, of course, lived differently. She was the free spirit. She worked as a receptionist for a few months before quitting. Tried yoga instruction, retail, even a stint as a personal assistant, each time giving up the moment things got tough. And each time, Dad framed it as resilience. She's exploring, finding her way. What he never admitted was that her freedom came from my sacrifice. Every time I picked up another late shift, every time I said no to myself, Lauren said yes, funded by the safety net that had always caught her. By 23, I was already tired in a way most people don't understand until midlife. Still, I pushed forward. Entry-level marketing job. Endless overtime. I clawed my way into an executive role by 30. My entire identity became survival, achievement, responsibility. But it came at a cost. While I built my life brick by brick, Lauren lived without consequence. She drifted from boyfriend to boyfriend, apartment to apartment, always landing on her feet because someone else picked up the tab. When one relationship ended, she simply moved on to the next. When one job bored her, she quit without fear of bills piling up. The contrast between us wasn't just frustrating, it was suffocating. My best friend, Chloe, saw it all. "Sarah, your family treats you like an ATM with legs," she told me once after a family gathering. "They take and take, but never see what you give." She wasn't wrong. My family had a way of rewriting reality. In their eyes, Lauren was the delicate flower who needed protecting, while I was the strong one who didn't need support. Every sacrifice I made became invisible. Every accomplishment I achieved was dismissed as ordinary. Even in love, the dynamic followed me. Previous boyfriends grew frustrated with the drama, unwilling to handle the endless imbalance between me and my family. But Jason, the man I was dating then, saw it clearly. "You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep them warm," he told me. "At some point, you'll burn out." I didn't want to believe him. I told myself it was temporary, that things would change, that Dad would eventually recognize me for who I was. But the truth was simpler: I had been trained to give. And Lauren had been trained to take. What I didn't know then was that the pattern wasn't just unfair, it was unsustainable. Because eventually, my giving would collide with Lauren's endless taking in a way that neither of us could ignore. And when it did, the entire family would be forced to face the truth. And just when I thought the imbalance couldn't get worse, my father remarried. Megan was 15 years younger than him, glamorous in a way that turned heads at every gathering. From the very beginning, she planted herself firmly on Lauren's side. "Family helps family," she would say with a meaningful look in my direction whenever Lauren mentioned her latest struggle. If I dared to question why I was always the one expected to help, Megan would chime in with a smile, "Lighten up, Sarah. Your sister just needs more support right now." She became not only my father's partner, but also Lauren's biggest advocate, reinforcing the same dynamic I had been fighting against my entire life. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night when my phone lit up with Lauren's name. Her voice was trembling, broken between sobs. "Brandon kicked me out. I have nowhere to go. Rent's due in 3 days, and I don't have a dime." My stomach twisted. I knew what was coming before she even asked. And in that moment, against every instinct, I agreed to something that would change the next 2 years of my life. I promised to cover her rent. When Brandon, her boyfriend, told her to move out, Lauren acted like she had been blindsided. She hadn't saved a penny. She couldn't move back in with Dad and Megan. The spare room had been converted into a home gym. So she turned to me. "Just for a few weeks, Sarah. Please. I'll get back on my feet." I lived in a one-bedroom apartment that barely fit me, let alone another adult with piles of clothes and chaos trailing behind her. I told her she couldn't move in, but I'd help her find a place. She had almost nothing to contribute, so I signed the lease on a tiny studio in Wicker Park, $1,200 a month. "I'll cover the first 3 months," I told her. "That's enough time to find a full-time job." She cried, hugged me, promised to hustle. She said she'd update her resume the next morning. 3 months came and went. She picked up a retail job at a boutique, 20 hours a week, barely enough for groceries. She made excuses: too few shifts, interview clothes too expensive, the job market unfair. "Just 1 more month, Sarah. I promise I'll figure it out." 1 month became 6. 6 became 12. Before I realized it, I had been wiring $1,200 to her landlord every single month for a year and a half. That money wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was the down payment I'd been saving for a condo. It was the graduate program I kept postponing. It was vacations with Jason that we never took. Each transfer felt like ripping out a piece of my own future and mailing it away. And the worst part? No one knew. Not my mother. Not Jason. Not Dad. Especially not Dad. Lauren made me swear to keep it secret. She was too embarrassed to admit how much she was struggling. But her Instagram told another story: designer clothes, brunches with friends, weekend trips to wineries in Michigan. Every time I asked about the posts, she had an excuse. "Oh, my friends treated me. It was on sale." The trip was mostly paid by someone else. I wanted to believe her. But deep down, I knew. My hard-earned money was financing her struggling lifestyle. Meanwhile, the family narrative never changed. At dinners, Dad bragged about how Lauren was finding her way, how she was brave for trying different things. When I mentioned my long work hours, he'd sigh. "Sarah, you focus too much on your career. Look at your sister, she knows how to enjoy life." Enjoy life? She was living a life I was paying for. Jason began to notice the strain. He saw me calculating budgets at night, cutting corners, skipping out on things we wanted. "This isn't sustainable," he told me one evening. "You're punishing yourself while enabling her to stay stuck." But I couldn't stop. Years of family conditioning had wired me to protect Lauren at all costs. If I cut her off, what would happen? Would she end up homeless? Would Dad blame me for abandoning her? Would I finally become the villain they already believed me to be? So I stayed silent. Month after month, I wired the money. Month after month, resentment grew heavier in my chest. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that she'd turn a corner, that she'd finally take responsibility. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was the safety net she never had to leave. And the longer I held that secret, the more invisible I became, not just in my family's eyes, but in my own. The night of the country club dinner, I walked in knowing exactly what to expect, my father holding court, Megan smiling at his side, Lauren glowing with charm while I sat quietly, listening. What I didn't expect was that this would be the night I would finally snap, the night I would lay every secret on the table in front of people who thought they already knew the story. The dining room was bathed in warm light, the kind meant to make everything look perfect. Crisp white tablecloths. Candles flickering. Family friends, the Harises and the Petersons, chatting politely. I spotted Lauren across the room, laughing with Mrs. Peterson, her brand new Louis Vuitton handbag catching the light. My heart sank. That bag cost over $2,000. Just days earlier, she had begged me for $300 to cover a business opportunity. I knew instantly, the money had gone to her shopping spree. "Sarah, you finally made it," Dad said, waving me over. We were just talking about Lauren's exciting plans. I sat down, taking the glass of wine offered to me, my hands trembling. "Miami," Mrs. Harris was saying. "What a wonderful girls' trip you have planned, Lauren. You deserve it." "Miami?" My head snapped toward her. Lauren avoided my gaze, staring hard at the menu. "A well-deserved break," Dad chimed in proudly. "She's always been so savvy about finding opportunities." I nearly choked on my wine. Savvy? She had tricked me into funding her vacation. The meal unfolded in the usual rhythm, Dad bragging about business, Megan telling garden stories, Lauren dazzling the room with anecdotes. I sat quietly, fury building with every approving nod they gave her. Finally, Mrs. Peterson turned to me. "Sarah, what about you? Any summer plans?" Before I could answer, Dad cut in. "Sarah doesn't have time for fun. Too busy climbing the corporate ladder." I forced a smile. I actually had to cancel my graduate courses this summer. Budget constraints. "That's the problem with your generation," Mr. Harris said. "Too focused on credentials, not enough on experiences." "Or maybe some of us just have different responsibilities," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Dad frowned. "There's no need to be defensive. This is exactly what I mean." Lauren takes comments in stride, "but you always argue. You make things difficult." The room fell silent. Even Megan shifted uncomfortably. I took a deep breath. My pulse thundered in my ears. Years of swallowing resentment rose to the surface. "I'm not difficult," I said evenly. "I just live with circumstances none of you understand." "What circumstances?" Dad scoffed. "You make twice what your sister does. You live alone. You should have plenty of money for hobbies if you weren't so selfish." That word. Selfish. It broke me. "You have no idea what my financial situation is," I said, my hands trembling around the napkin. "I know enough," Dad said dismissively. "You spend everything on yourself while your sister struggles." I put my napkin down. My voice was calm, but inside I was shaking. "Who do you think pays her rent every month?" The table froze. Forks clinked. Glasses paused midair. Dad blinked. "What are you talking about?" "For 2 years," I said, my voice firm, "I've paid Lauren's rent. $1,400. Every single month." The air left the room. Even the hum of the country club seemed to vanish. All eyes turned to Lauren, whose face drained of color. "Is this true?" Dad demanded. "It's complicated," Lauren stammered. "Sarah offered to help." 2 years is not temporary, I snapped. And I didn't offer. You called me crying at midnight. I made sacrifices so you could live your lifestyle, while this family called me selfish. Megan tried to smooth it over. Let's not be dramatic. Family helps family. Don't, I cut in. 3 days ago, Lauren told me she needed money for a business opportunity. That money paid for her Miami trip. And that handbag? I'm guessing that wasn't free either. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. It was a gift. From who? What friend spends thousands on gifts? The Harisas and Petersons shifted uncomfortably, desperate to disappear. Dad's face was red with anger. Why would you air this in front of everyone? Is this revenge? No, I said, standing. This is me finally telling the truth. I am done being your ATM, Lauren. You have 30 days to figure out your rent. You can't just cut her off, Dad shouted. Where's she supposed to go? She can move back in with you. Turn your home gym into a bedroom. Or get roommates. Or work full-time. Because it's no longer my problem. The table was stunned. Megan's smile was tight, Mrs. Peterson stared at her plate, and Lauren looked betrayed. Dad glared at me like I had ruined his perfect evening. This, he said coldly, is why people find you difficult. I picked up my purse. My voice was steady as I turned back one last time. I'm not difficult. I'm done being silent. And I'm done being called selfish while carrying the weight of this family. Enjoy your dessert. My heels echoed on the hardwood as I walked out. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. Terrifying. Liberating. Final. The night I walked out of the country club, heels echoing against polished wood floors, I felt lighter than I had in years. But that feeling didn't last. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 3 missed calls from Dad. 5 from Lauren. A text from Mom, what happened? The explosion I'd set off at that dinner table was only beginning to ripple through the family. And soon, the storm came straight for me. By the next morning, I had over a dozen missed calls and nearly 24 text messages. Some were from Lauren, ranging from angry to desperate to manipulative. How could you humiliate me like that? Please call me, we need to figure this out. I guess you never cared about me at all. My father's messages were harsher, your behavior last night was inexcusable. You embarrassed this family in front of my friends. We need to talk when you've calmed down and can be reasonable. Reasonable. That was his word. To him, reasonable meant silent. I turned my phone off and stayed at Jason's apartment for the night. He listened while I replayed every detail, every word. He squeezed my hand and said simply, I'm proud of you. You finally told the truth. But courage doesn't erase fear. The next day, reality set in, I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Lauren didn't stop at texts. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. Your sister is in the lobby, the receptionist whispered over the phone, her voice uneasy. She's crying. She says she won't leave until you talk to her. Classic Lauren. Public drama to force my hand. For years, I would have rushed downstairs to comfort her, to avoid the scene. But this time, my voice was steady. If she refuses to leave, please call security. Tell her I'll call her after work hours. It felt brutal. But it was necessary. That evening, when I finally called, her voice was full of outrage. How could you have security escort me out? I'm your sister. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just said, you cannot show up at my workplace and create a scene. That's a boundary. And I'm not changing my mind about the rent. You have 30 days. She tried every tactic, anger, guilt, even vague threats. Dad says you've always been jealous. That this is your way of punishing us. No, I told her. This isn't punishment. It's boundaries. But if Lauren was persistent, my father was relentless. He called my office line during the day, knowing I'd be forced to answer. "We need to discuss this like adults," he said. "Your sister is distraught. You blindsided her." "I didn't blindside her. I told the truth." This sudden cutoff is vindictive. It's not sudden. It's been 2 years. And I'm done. "If you were having financial difficulties, you should have told me," he insisted. "I'm not struggling," I said firmly. "I'm choosing to invest in my own future. That doesn't make me selfish. It makes me responsible." His sigh crackled through the line. "And what about your sister's future?" For once, I didn't flinch. "Maybe now she'll finally build one for herself." There was silence. Then the old refrain, "You've always been stubborn." But this time, stubbornness felt like strength. The pressure didn't stop with them. My aunt called, disappointed in my lack of loyalty. My uncle said I was overreacting. Even my mother, the eternal peacemaker, tried to convince me to compromise. "Maybe you could pay half, just for a while?" Every voice told me the same thing: sacrifice more, stay quiet, don't rock the boat. But something inside me had shifted. Once the truth was spoken, I couldn't go back. So I held my ground. I went to therapy. I leaned on Jason. I reminded myself every single day, saying no doesn't make me selfish. It makes me human. The weeks after the country club dinner were brutal: accusations, guilt trips, cold shoulders. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by them. I was defined by me.